is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a bit of things to talk to you about today, as today is now August 1st. It's the start of August, start of a new month. And we already have ensembles and models picking up on tropical development. So we're going to be talking about mainly that today, as well as conditions. But before we get started, what a trade deadline yesterday. That was pretty insane for those of you following MLB stuff and all of that. Carlos Correa is returning back to Houston. I'm really excited for that. But with that being said, and my pleasantries will be saved for until a little bit later, let's go ahead and dive right into it right now. So starting off once again, we're back at the European ensembles. We're going to go ahead and actually knock this out first and get this out of the way, and then we're going to talk about some conditions and then a few other things after that, because we have quite a bit to go over for you today. So starting off with what we have going on, this is currently 5 days out in the main development region, and we have some areas of interest, a few ensembles picking up on some low-pressure systems southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. This is for August 6th right here. But the new kind of general idea that we have with this right here, we have two big things that we're going to talk about today. Number one, just the system is, instead of heading towards the Bahamas, it's heading towards the Caribbean. And number two, the GFS is also picking up on this as well. Before, the European was pretty aggressive about the GFS, like, we're not sure about this. Now the GFS has really picked up on this, and the European also has as well. So we'll go ahead and talk about both of those runs right here. Going to 144 hours out. Already you have quite a few ensembles that are being picked up on, and this is August 7th at this current point as the system is moving further to the west, kind of detaching from the intertropical convergence zone, or ITCZ, as it's shifting much more to the north than it has in previous weeks. So we're going to want to pay attention to that, but this is now moving due west towards the Lesser Antilles, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. Going to 7 days out, this is now August 8th. What you're seeing right here is you're seeing one pretty big, powerful wave, about 1,001 millibars, while the rest of them remain generally weak as it's heading towards the Lesser Antilles. That's kind of to be expected. This system's going to take some time to organize and develop, and it likely won't do it until it either gets towards the Lesser Antilles or moves past them into the Caribbean. So we're going to want to pay attention to that, and we'll show you conditions to kind of back up that statement as well. But going to 8 days out right here, 8 days out, you're noticing more signals are starting to come up. You're noticing more areas of interest and more ensembles picking up on this as well. That one very powerful ensemble is really strengthening and really intensifying as well. I believe at 10 days out, this gets down to a 969 millibar system over here, so we're going to want to watch that as well. But you're noticing quite a bit more consolidation and quite a bit more ensembles that are picking up on this development, so we're going to want to pay attention to this, especially as this heads towards the Lesser Antilles. Going to 216 hours out, models are really starting to like this as well. You're noticing more ensembles are getting picked up into the Caribbean Sea as well. They are still relatively weak, but they are increasing in power as time continues to go on. So we're going to want to pay attention to it. 978 millibars on top of this right here, the furthest north system right here. So you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. Just how, considering how concentrated this is a pretty big concern, I would say. And then by 10 days out, take a look at this. You're noticing a lot more ensembles really tracking this at this current point. 1,001, 997, 1,001. Like, we're noticing a lot more power with these ensembles compared to what I've seen previously. So that is another red flag that we are going to want to pay attention to. But also, the GFS has really started to pick up on this as well. And we'll go ahead and show you that. So here's the GFS for you guys right here. This is the 0Z. We're going to go ahead actually and go back to 5 days out, and then we'll run the whole thing once again. But here's what we got for you. We are noticing a pretty big concentrated signal southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands once again that you're going to want to pay attention to at this current point in time. We're going to want to watch that because normally if it's just one of the two, things, you're going, okay, let's wait for to see how the other responds. But now that you're seeing both of these kind of being on the same page and kind of going, okay, we're looking at the same stuff, we're looking at the same initialization, that's when things really start to turn up, and you really need to start paying attention going forward. But going to 6 days out now, you're noticing it kind of does level off a little bit, but watch in later days and later hours as well, because that really starts to come up, and especially in the Caribbean, as this starts to move further to the west into that region, that's when it really starts to turn up as a result. So going to 168 hours out, unfortunately, it's kind of hard for me to do, so I'll do 162 hours out. You're noticing it's relatively weak at this current point, but you're going to want to watch to see how this will ultimately pan out, because matter of fact, if we go ahead and go to 192 hours out, bam! Look at this right here. This is a pretty big uptick compared to what we've seen previously. We're looking at 1,009, 1,008, 1,008. You're noticing some of these have power too. We're looking at 40 to 50 knots wind speeds right here. So that is something you're also going to want to pay attention to as well. That's a pretty big area of concern right here, especially if you're seeing the GFS also picking up on this as well. Europeans already picked up on this pretty well, but now the GFS is starting to turn up. That's another area of watch and another area to be concerned about. So going to 216 hours out, it becomes a lot more organized, a lot more concentrated, and the GFS really wants the system to enter the Caribbean Sea at this current point, and you're seeing all these ensembles just screaming about this in that region as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to that as well as time continues to go on, and as more ensembles really start to turn up with this as well. But then you're going to go ahead and go to 10 days out and look at this. You're looking at a lot more power with the GFS ensembles, with some of these getting up to hurricane strength in the Caribbean Sea. Some have it going up to the north. That's in the minority. But what you're noticing with all of this is just the amount of power associated with this. 1,000, 996, 1,003, 1,004. And a lot of these, too, also impact the Greater Antilles as well. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to as we get towards August 11th, as we get towards those later times as well, because what we're noticing is that wave train is kind of allowing for more moisture to enter the atmosphere, and kind of allowing, kind of crawling for these other waves to walk, and then for this to ultimately run. And we can go ahead and show you the satellite imagery to kind of show you that as well. So here's your satellite imagery for you, ladies and gentlemen. You're noticing two things that you're out here in the main development region. One, a more active intertropical convergence zone. That is something you're going to want to pay attention to moving forward, and you're noticing how much further up to the north these areas are. That's your ITCZ right there, folks, and you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. Second thing you're noticing is it's getting fed more and more by these tropical waves that are coming off the Sahel region in Africa. The monsoon season over there has really exploded over the last few days, and you're going to want to watch to see how they originate as tropical waves and how they ultimately start to organize and potentially develop, as we've seen with the European and GFS. But there's also another thing that we need to watch as well, and that is your water vapor. Look at this. All this convection, this shift up to the north from the ITCZ, and this increase from the tropical waves of rainfall is considerably moistening up the atmosphere. Matter of fact, we can go ahead and go back to 120 frames just to show you the evolution of this. It's really started to happen across much of the main development region. And look at how much further to the west this has ultimately gone compared to what we were seeing yesterday. This is a pretty big surge across much of the tropics right here, starting around July 31st and moving on now, and that is expected to continue considerably at this current point in time. And you're also noticing a few other things that we'll get into in just a second, but the combination of tropical waves and the ITCZ shifting further up to the north and really starting to intensify in terms of convection is allowing for atmosphere to moisten up and for less and less dry air to enter the Atlantic and MDR, and allowing for tropical systems to potentially organize and develop as they come off of Africa. So if you're in the Caribbean, if you're in the Lesser Antilles, if you're in all those areas, you're going to want to pay very close attention over the next few days to see how the ITCZ continues to move further to the west, how the system continues to potentially show up on models, and what potential impacts there could be as well. Because not only that, we're actually entering a pretty favorable area for the Madden-Julian oscillation. So here's what we have for your MJO forecast. We haven't talked about this in a little while, but this is what we have for August 1st through the 15th. What we're noticing for right here is we're going to have a period of a few days from August 1st through August 5th that an active MJO is going to be moving through the Atlantic, and you could argue that it's kind of already started in the intertropical convergence zone and a few areas that are generating more convection. But what is the MJO? I'm sure a lot of people are asking you. MJO is essentially an area where there's more divergence aloft and more convergence below. So basically, if you want your convection, you want convergence below, and you want to rise and rise and rise, and then diverge and breathe out in the upper levels at like 200 millibars. So that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to. With that, and considering we're going to have a favorable environment for just that, that is something you're going to need to watch. Now, granted, the main the main synoptic scale and global scale effects of this do kind of delay and linger for about a week. So yes, you're going to get mesoscale effects immediately, where you're going to have more convection, more moisture, and more divergence aloft and convergence at the surface, but about a week from now, what you're going to notice is that kind of starting to articulate with more synoptic type systems, which is your tropical waves, your tropical cyclones, and all of those areas as well. So basically, that's your situation that you're dealing with right here as you're heading towards the early August. But this is kind of your first time this year where the MJO has become favorable in parts of the Atlantic. So you're going to want to pay attention to that as we go on. You're also going to want to watch the conditions as well, and we'll go ahead and show you some of those right now. Starting off with your water temperature, I really don't need to explain this more than I have to. Water temperature is hot across the Atlantic, across the tropics. Main development region especially, you've been seeing that surge over there because of the trade winds. You've noticed 27 to 28 degrees Celsius waters over here that you're going to want to pay attention to. 28 plus degrees Celsius, especially as you get west of the Cabo Verde Islands, that you're going to, and that's kind of an area that I've been watching. My main thing I've been kind of saying is I don't think development, at least climatologically, is going to start right away, and instead it's going to take its time to organize and develop, and it's going to wait until it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles before it starts strengthening, and that is a very big concern I have with that, because what that does is not only does it have a chance to rapidly intensify more as it moves into those warmer waters and deeper OHC, it's going to give those people lesser time to prepare and less time to go, hey, we need to watch this out, and we're going to have to pay attention to those trends moving forward. But as you get into the Caribbean, and as you get further to the west into the Atlantic Basin, man, oh man, this is a very concerning thing I am paying attention to. 29 to 30 degrees Celsius of water, like the 30 degrees Celsius waters are north of the tropical subtropical border right here, especially further out, closer out to sea. That is a very big concern I have, because not only is that going to give the systems more time to organize and strengthen if they move to the west, but let's say they shift towards the northwest, towards the mid-Atlantic, towards New England, towards New York, towards Canada. That's more time for strengthening, that's more time for it to maintain its strength, and that's potentially stronger landfalls in those regions right there. So if you're in the mid-Atlantic and pretty much areas to the north of that, all the way up to Canada, like Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, you're going to want to pay very close attention this season, and we'll keep you updated on that. Gulf, I don't need to talk more about. Caribbean, I don't need to talk more about, but I want to highlight the MDR and the Atlantic Basin this time around, and we'll go more into depth with the Gulf and the Caribbean as the days continue to move forward. OHC is also another big thing that we're watching as well. The ocean heat content in the eastern part of the MDR isn't particularly the best. You're looking at 25 to 50 OHC across that region, especially as those tropical waves are coming through and generating convection and all of that stuff, moistening up the atmosphere for sure, but it's also starting to slowly cool off the waters in those regions and kind of tap into that OHC. But it's mainly areas to the west of like 45 degrees west where you're seeing that big jump up to 50, then 75, then 100 OHC as you're heading towards the Lesser Antilles. And that's kind of why I've been saying that at least initially when they come off Africa, they're most likely not going to develop right away. It's going to take time to organize and develop and wait till they get to warmer waters for them to really start to turn up and really start to strengthen considerably. So that's something I've been paying attention to. But look at how far north all this OHC goes in the Atlantic Basin. You're north of the subtropical region, you still have 50 plus OHC. 50 plus OHC that far up to the north last year was unprecedented. Now it's happening again, and that's another area to watch as well. The OHC in much of the Caribbean remains pretty concentrated across much of the northern two-thirds of it, but look at the Gulf, folks. The western part of the Gulf is looking at areas of 125 plus OHC. So if you're in Texas, Veracruz, areas in Mexico like that, you're going to want to keep a very close eye on that as well, and we'll keep you updated on that moving forward. But the loop current continues to not really surprise me, 150 to 175 OHC in that region, so we're going to have to pay attention to that as well. Shifting over to wind shear, this is the big kahuna I've been kind of talking about right here. Wind shear already across much of the western tropics is weak. Across the eastern MDR, it's a bit of a different story. There's more wind shear over here, and that's going to kind of persist for the next few days. But as more of these systems and more of these waves come off the coast of Africa, pretty much by the time we start around August 4th, a lot of the wind shear in the MDR collapses. And as we get to August 5th, which is now 4 days out, that's when you're going to want to pay attention to. And then August 6th, at that current point, where we're about 5 days out from the European and GFS tagging things, look at the wind shear. It's non-existent across much of the MDR. As it moves further to the west, too, there's no shear in sight, and that continues through day 6, through day 7. There is a little bit of wind shear, but part of that can be attributed to the outflow and the storm itself, but we'll pay attention to that. But regardless, that is a very concerning thing I'm paying attention to right here. We're in an environment where this wave that comes off the MDR enters an area of very little shear. And the European and the GFS are both picking up on that. When you see analogs like that as a forecaster, and you see the ensembles picking up on it, you put 2 and 2 together, and you go, oh my goodness, we need to watch this, we need to take this very seriously. And that's kind of why I'm highlighting this as much as I am. And then as you get to the 10th and all of that, look at what's going on in the Caribbean. Look at what's going on in the MDR. That pattern continues to persist. Now, granted, there is a little bit of shear that enters there, but it's not nearly as powerful as what we've been kind of looking at over the last couple of days. That is a huge problem as you get into August. And I think the tropics are going to be waking up very, very soon. And so do the ensembles. And now let's go ahead and get to the moisture, because that's also a very important factor. The moisture, yeah, it's kind of mixed across much of the Caribbean and much of the tropics right now, but watch the MDR as this huge burst starts to come off around August 4th. There is some dry air to the north of this, but honestly, I'm not that concerned about it because the dry air that's there can be mixed out, and that's kind of what's being forecasted at this current point. This tropical wave is going to remain in this pocket of moisture, and it's going to remain in there for a very extended period of time, and whatever dry air that's going to try to get into the system is not going to really be as much as what we would see like maybe back in June or July with the Sahara dust. But what you're noticing with that is that dust is getting pushed up to Europe more and more as time continues to go on, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to moving forward. You're noticing kind of the moisture really starts to increase across much of the Caribbean and much of the main development region, and it starts to kind of remain concentrated in the subtropics in those regions as well, so we'll have to pay attention to that. But one last thing I need to show you is the precipitable water. Here's your precipitable water, folks. There is a more moist environment compared to what we've seen previously in the main development region and in the Caribbean, which is why I think the European and GFS is picking up on this as well. So that's all factors that we're going to have to pay attention to as well. If you're in the Caribbean and the Lesser Antilles, stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on all of these things and more here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. Welcome back, Carlos Correa, to the Astros. I'm really happy you're back. Let's go, Houston. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. We've been covering this ad nauseum behind the scenes. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.